Hi, good morning.
It's my sister
Welcome.
tomorrow.
Oh, it's your sister. Wow, welcome.
Turn into a family.
You can sit there. Where do you live, Tom?
I live in St. Philip with my brother
Oh,
in Washington High.
cool. And you've been kept a secret for all this time.
Yeah, I just finished nursing school, so I was kind of busy.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. I
Wow.
got my job yesterday. Thank you.
Wow. Very cool.
So, yeah, sorry for I was late.
No, glad to have you. You're right. Who said this? Hundreds of people are coming in. All right, we're almost there, I think. 18. Okay, people, turn your video on if you can. We'd love to see your faces and get started. Ah, there's Brenda. Neil, hi Neil. Good to see you. Hi Brenda. Morning, Shabbat Shalom. Okay, Caroline, thank you for holding the Zoom room today. I think we're ready to screen share the bracha over Torah study, the blessing over Torah study. We've got a lot of juicy text to do today, so I want to get started. Okay, everybody, you can unmute yourself. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, source of all life, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to soak in your words of Torah. Amen. Okay, so today it's Parshat Chayei Sarah. And I want to do a little bit of what we might call a literary structural analysis, meaning the following. So if you recall, in that horrible story of the Akedah, which happened last week, at the end of the Akedah, the end of the binding of Isaac, Isaac disappears from the text, right? We'll look at that in a second. He is nowhere to be found. And in fact, he disappears for chapters, from chapter 22 basically to the end of chapter 24. But chapter 24 is I think is the longest, I don't think one of the longest chapter in all of the 5 books of Moses. So he's missing for a while, and there's that like dramatic tension building up, like, where's Isaac? Where's Isaac? Where's Isaac? And his father, Abraham, calls on his servant, right, to go find him a wife, right, in Abraham's birthplace, or the town basically that Abraham came from. So what's going on? Like, where is Isaac? And how is Isaac restored to the text? Hi, Marcy, good to see you. Another way of saying it is the promise that God made is threatened and kind of hanging by a thread. And how is it restored? How is promise and blessing restored in the text? In the story of Abraham, there's tension between the promise and its sort of fulfillment throughout Genesis. But in the story of Abraham and Sarah, it's most threatened. It seems absolutely impossible. Sarah has a child when she's at 90, and then the child is promptly sacrificed. I mean, not fully, because God stops Abraham at the last moment. But, this is a promise that is practically not fulfilled. Okay, and so the third way of saying it, Shabbat Shalom, is let's look at Isaac's recovery from trauma. How does Isaac come back to life? And how does the story continue? And at this moment where many of us feel kind of either, destabilized by world events or in some despair, that's a really important question to ask. Right? How do we continue? How does this story go on? And what are the resources we need with which to continue the story? Okay, so those are all my introductions, sort of different ways of seeing the question and the theme. And we're going to start, Caroline, today, I don't have my computer, so I'm gonna ask you to, yeah. So go to the top so people can see the title, Restoring Blessing and Flow, the Drama of Isaac and Rebecca. Okay, so we start with the Akedah. We're gonna dip into last week's Parsha and then go forward. Hi, Tomas, good to see you. Okay. So I wanted to give you these few verses to underline or show how the text highlights Isaac's disappearance. Like, how do we know that Isaac's not there? So here we are in the middle of the Akedah. It says, "Vayikach Abraham et atzei ha'olah," and Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering. Vayisem al Yitzchak beno, and put it on his son Isaac. Which is such a heartbreaking image to imagine Isaac carrying the wood for his own sacrifice. And he took the in his hand the firestone and the knife. And the two of them walked together. Right. So again, that like unbearable tension in the text between their togetherness and their connection and their even intimacy, which we'll see in a minute, and what Abraham is planning to do because God told him to do it. Vayomer Yitzchak el Abraham aviv, and Yitzchak said to his father, or to Abraham his father, right? So there's this relational language used again and again. Vayomer, and he said, Avi. So he said, my father. Vayomer hineni b'ni. Abraham said, I am here, my son. The hineni conveys a sense of complete presence. I am here for you. Vayomer, and I'm here to do your bidding. Vayomer hine ha'esh ha'etzim va'ayeh haseh lola. So he asks a very reasonable question. He says, behold, here's the firestone and the wood, but where's the lamb for offering, for sacrifice? Or sheep, lamb. I don't know if there's a difference here. Vayomer Abraham Elohim, Vayomer Abraham, and Abraham said, Elohim yireh lo haseh la'olah b'ni. And Abraham said, it is God who will see to the sheep for this burnt offering, my son. It's like, whoa. Well, that's true because Abraham commanded him to sacrifice his son, Isaac. And then again. So the Torah is really underlining this. Vayelchu shnehem yachdan. And the two of them walked together. And if you recall, Abraham left the lads, the Na'arim, right, who were sort of supporting the trip, behind, and Abraham and Isaac went together by themselves. Vayavo el hamakom asher amar lo Elohim, vayiven sham Abraham et hamizbeach, vayaroch et ha'etzim, vayakod et Yitzchak beno, vayasem oto al hamizbeach b'ma'al la'etzim. They arrived at the place of which God had told him. Abraham built an altar there. He laid out the wood. He bound his son Isaac. He laid him on the altar on top of the wood. So, for whoever has not read this story, the angel of God in a moment will call Abraham from the heavens and stop Abraham so that he does not sacrifice. Right? Okay. We'll see more about that in a minute. But for now, the next text should be text number 2. Somehow the numbers are not on the printed. On the printed sheet, are they? There's some places, but not others. I'll say that's weird. So at the end of the Akedah, it says, Vayeshev Avraham el ne'arav. Abraham returned to his servants. V'yakumu vayelchu yachdav. So, and they rose from there, or they departed together for Beersheba. And they departed together. That's the point. Vayilchu yachdav, that same phrase, and they walked together. Thank you, Caroline. I should have said, share the screen. So the togetherness that was before between Abraham and Isaac is now between Abraham and his servants, and Isaac is nowhere to be seen. Yilchu yachdav el Beersheba. So they went to the to Beersheba, or the springs of seven. Vayishev Abraham Beersheba, and Abraham settled in Beersheba, and there's no sign of Isaac. So where the hell is Isaac? Right, so that's the question. So, I think it's a reasonable, even though the Torah did not have the language of trauma, it's reasonable to understand from the text that Isaac in some way was like annihilated, right? Like Isaac as who Isaac was, with his father, with like the image, of his father about to kill him, somehow disappeared, but he could no longer function. But let's see what the tradition does with it. It's really fascinating. So there's a whole tradition in different places that Isaac actually dies, that his father actually sacrifices him, and then he's resurrected. So we're going to look at Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer first. Rabbi,
It's very Jesus.
so there's lots of different texts in rabbinic literature that you could say is very Jesus-ish. Right? Or you could say Jesus, the story of Jesus-ish, or Jesus-ish, is actually a very Jewish idea.
Right.
It's taken a few steps further. I wanted to get beyond these few texts, Tony.
Just one brief thing.
Okay, only if you promise it's brief. Go ahead.
Tony, could you speak into a mic, please?
Oh, we don't hear you because of the mic. Thank you, Tony.
When Isaac asks, where is the lamb? My immediate association was, where's Jesus?
Mhm.
And where are you? Where are you? Where is Jesus? Where is the lamb immediately points to for any
Yeah.
praised Christian leaning person.
Wow.
To Jesus.
Okay, great.
For
Now,
me, it was
and
the beef.
what? Where's the beef? Where's the beef? And
So
to,
that's it.
okay, to expand on what Tomas said, there in the Leviticus Rabbah, for instance, it says very clearly that the death of the righteous atoned for the sins of the community in response to Miriam's death. So that's interesting. So there's this trope that's there that kind of set the seeds, or planted the seeds for this later articulation of the Jesus story. So, I think we always have to watch when we say, oh, that sounds very Christian, because it actually sounds very Jewish.
Yeah.
Right?
You could also say it sounds like older other older.
It's shared traditions from which different narratives sprung, but it's sort of like a shared soil,
Exactly.
right? A shared soil of sort of narrative seeds, we could say. Thank you for that. Okay. Let's see how Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer articulates this issue. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kevan shehigia hachereb al tzavarav parcha v'yetza nafsho shel Yitzchak. So Rabbi Yehuda says, when the knife reached the neck of Isaac, his soul kind of flew away. The soul of Isaac flew away. The kevan shehishmiya kolo mi ben hakuvim. And when God made his voice, or God's voice, sound or heard between the cherubim, and said to Abraham, Al tishlach yadcha, don't send your hand against the child. Nafsho chazara legufo, his soul came back to his body. V'kam ve'amad Yitzchak al raglav, and Yitzchak rose up and stood on his feet. Vayada Yitzchak shekach hametim, and Isaac knew that this is how the righteous in the future, shekach hametim atidim lahachayot, will be resurrected or will be enlivened. But patach v'amar, and opened up and said, Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hametim. Blessed are you, God, who restores the dead to life. Whoa! So that was a moment for Isaac blessing God for being, so to speak, having his life restored, being resurrected. Okay. So it's kind of shocking, right? So that's like an 8th century text, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, around there. And now this is further articulated in a halachic work. I couldn't find the context specifically. In Sefer HaEshkol, right? The same idea that Isaac said this blessing at that moment, and quoted in Shalom Spiegel's book, The Last Trial, which focuses on the fact that, you know, Isaac is seen by the tradition to have died at the moment and come back to life. Okay, all right. Here's another few texts about that, and then we'll stop to see if there are comments or questions, and then go to the next piece of this. So in Midrash Hagadol, which is a collection of different midrashim, it says, "Vayeshev Abraham el Narav," and Abraham returned to his lads. And then the midrash asks very directly, "V'Yitzchak hechanu," and where's Isaac? Ella Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Pintat, and Elazar, the Rabbi Elazar, the son of Pintat, said, "Af al pi shelo met Yitzchak," even though Isaac didn't die, Ma'aleh alav hakatuv ki ilu met. The Torah sees him as if he died. The afro mutal al gabe hamizbeach, and his ashes are sprinkled. I don't know, mutal is on a place sprinkled on the top of the altar. The kach ne'emar yashev Aram el Narav, and that is why the Torah says that Abraham returned to his lads and not Isaac. So the midrash here is saying it's as if he died. Okay, so now again, here's a different answer. Yitzchak hechanhu, and where is Yitzchak? Ella shehechniso hakadosh hu l'gan Eden v'yeshav sham ba shalosh shanim. And so God placed him in the Garden of Eden, and he stayed there for 3 years. Now that's amazing, because where else would you want to go to heal besides the Garden of Eden? That's the place to go, right?
Say so, Ralph.
Better than paradise, for sure. It's a place to go. Okay, so let me stop there. We can stop sharing and see if there are comments or questions or puzzlements. Is like, what the hell is going on here? And then we'll see what happens in our parsha. Yeah. If no one else has a question that hasn't spoken, you may.
Okay.
I don't see any other questions or comments. So come
Mike,
to the
please.
speaker.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, wait, Tomas has a technical question.
I don't know why I thought this, but I always assumed the Garden of Eden just disappeared at the moment of expulsion. Is there a tradition?
Yeah,
Canonical or mystical that it's?
absolutely. It's just there. Yeah,
So it's
Still,
nice.
to this
that's
day,
good to know.
It's just there, we're waiting for us to go
wait
back.
for you.
Yeah,
Waiting.
waiting for you in particular.
There as a
On-
resource.
On
to
the
draw
architectural
upon.
structure of it all.
And sometimes,
For a second.
sometimes the world to come and Gan Eden are also interchangeable.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Tony.
So I'm gonna say somewhat autobiographically that as one goes further on this spiritual journey and confronts the increasing seeming connection between exhaustion and then coming back to life the next hour or the next day after the nap or the whole night's sleep, and similarly confronts or experiences more and more some connection between nothingness and everythingness, or as the Buddhists say, formlessness and form, emptiness and form. As I've experienced that over the years more and more, it does seem increasingly uncanny, the close connection between death and life. So that you start, it's much easier to, like the Zen masters have, there's a great Zen koan where a
Okay, I
Zen
want you to
master,
bring this to a close.
Yes.
Soon.
Zen master goes up to a casket
Yeah,
of somebody who's just died and
yeah.
knocks on it and says, alive or dead, alive or dead.
Wow.
I
Well,
won't
that
say, I
reminds
won't
me
say.
of, there's the morning liturgy actually, mentions like the morning blessings. No, not the morning blessings. in Modeh Ani and El Hai Neshama, this idea of being woken
Coming
up
back.
from sleep is like coming back from the dead.
Yeah, yeah.
So absolutely. So maybe we're practicing life and death
Ex-
throughout our life.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
exactly.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm going back to carrying the wood.
Yeah.
I mean, as a story, to me, it makes more sense that the father would be carrying the wood on his own back.
Yeah.
If there's, I really,
Yeah.
there has to be something
Yeah.
significant
Yeah.
in making the son
Yeah.
carry the wood for his.
Yeah. I think it
Exactly.
increases is it irony? That the tension, something that he's carrying the wood on his back for his own slaughter.
Yeah.
But I don't have a lot more to say about it. The Midrash actually goes nuts about Isaac's willingness and consent to this. So it might sort of underline that.
Something about innocence, that he wouldn't understand what that was for? Or-
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I hadn't really thought.
Yeah,
about
yeah,
this
yeah,
before.
yeah. He's carrying, he doesn't have the knowledge, but he may be beginning to suspect with his questions, or maybe not. But yeah, we get it and he doesn't.
It only makes me think, without going in too much into it.
Yeah.
Years ago, a little Japanese film, the story is set on a remote Japanese island, limited resources. And the tradition is at some point, without going into the story, the son, part of the tradition is when one of the elders reaches a certain age or stage, the son carries that person on his back up to this remote spot where the elders are taken at the end of their lives. And so part of the story is, it's a powerful story about
Wow.
carrying that responsibility.
Wow.
And somehow that sprang
Oh,
to
that's
mind, but I
interesting.
thought, well, this
So you're,
doesn't-
you're raising the question, is it an initiation rite
is there,
of some kind?
right, or,
Yeah.
this is kind of flips it a little bit.
Yeah,
It's kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
like forcing
Yeah, yeah.
the son, to make his own sacrifice. I mean, in
Yeah.
a way, he's sacrificing himself.
Yeah.
It's a very slightly different story, but somehow there's some connection.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
We all always already bear in us or on us the means of our own immolation.
Our own
Sorry, I
function,
can't hear
for
Thomas.
sure.
Can you put the mic closer to him?
Good point.
Wait, okay, Hamas said it also might indicate that we all bear the means to our own immolation. Okay, we're gonna go on. Paul, one more comment, two more comments, but brief, because I want to get into our parsha. Go ahead, Paul and then David.
Very briefly, the reason that Abraham forces his son to carry the wood for his son's sacrifice,
Yeah,
it's cruel. And the story intentionally is designed to focus on Abraham's cruelty.
that's one way to read it, and I think you can support that reading. It's absolutely not the only way to read it. You can also read it as a great tension between Abraham's love for his child and what God's telling him to do. So you can read it in that direction.
Or, again, yes, of course, there are multiple ways of interpreting it, but I'm choosing now to assert that the point of the story is to highlight and expand upon Abraham's cruelty.
Okay,
And-
and maybe that's Isaac's experience of it, even if it's not Abraham's cruelty. So yes, I'll let that stand. Okay, David.
Well, I was with Paul,
Aha.
but to a point. I mean, the problem I have with this is that it's not Isaac's story. It's Abraham's story and God's story. And it's such a, I just want to say once again that it's like so profound that the child sacrifice was kind of normal in the area during that time. And this is such a moment where it's like this, where it ends. Like, we don't do this, you're not doing this. So to put this as Isaac's story, he's really a big player, and it's really Abraham and God's story. But I'm with you with this.
So let me,
But I don't think it's cruel, Paul.
I think that's a really powerful point. And just as, so,
The point is in the story.
you know what, let me speak to it,
Please.
and maybe it'll become clear. And if not, okay. So I'm gonna pick up on one of your points at least. It's Abraham's story, it's not Isaac's. But Isaac's story is his collateral damage. We're gonna move into Isaac's story because it becomes Isaac's story. So I agree with you. There, it's not Abraham's story.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not Isaac's story.
but the
It's Abraham's story.
rabbi's saying that,
But not only that, but in the text, it also becomes Isaac's story in his disappearance. Also, I think like if you think about, a couple that divorces, it's their story. But the collateral damage is inevitably painful for the children. That's what happens to the next generation. It's not intentional cruelty, but it lands in a really cruel way. Possibly, not always. I don't know. I'm not talking about, but it can, right? So what happens to the parents, it's their story, but then it translates to the children, even without intention. Okay, let's go on. We're in now Genesis 24. So why this is not side by side, I don't know, because that's how I arranged it on Safari. Whatever, technical difficulties. So, you know what? Maybe I'll read the Hebrew, or maybe even Asher Chaim will read the Hebrew. But yeah, but screen share the English. Asher Chaim, can you read the? Paul,
Thank
do you mind
you.
taking your hand down?
ואברהם זקן בא בימים, ואדוני ברך את אברהם בכל. Abraham was aging, coming along in years, and Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh had blessed Abraham through everything. Sorry, I'm reading this on my screen, and for whatever reason, it just decided to gum up. Vayomer Avraham el avdo zakan beito hamoshel bechol asher lo. Abraham spoke or commanded his servant, the elder of his house, the one who took care of everything that he owned. Simna yadcha tahat yerechi. Place your hand under my thigh.
Okay, let's stop there for a second. So Abraham's about to send his servant, who takes care of everything for him, to the place where he came from, Aram Naharaim, to get a wife for Isaac. So there are a few questions here. Why can't Isaac go by himself? Right? So know that Isaac is the only forefather who never leaves the promised land. That's number one. Number two, Isaac's a mess, possibly, potentially, right? And doesn't have that capacity. And Abraham says again, just don't, again and again, you see, don't let my son go to that place. And the other question is, like, why does Isaac have to marry a wife from there? So Isaac, and Abraham will make this clear, Abraham doesn't want him to marry a woman, a Canaanite woman, but rather a woman from his extended family. Okay? And the other question is, like, why doesn't Abraham say, like, okay, go get a daughter, go to my family and go see my family and get a wife for him from there? It's much more vague than that. I'll leave that question open for now. I don't have a specific answer for that, but it's really interesting. Okay. Oh, and the other thing is, place your hand under my thigh. So oaths have to do, especially with Abraham, generativity and promise. And now generativity is threatened, right? So we're now in the field of how are we going to restore, what's going to be the mechanism that restores this line? Okay, so that's the question we're working on. Go ahead.
May I throw in one
Yeah.
more?
Yeah.
These days, people, at least 20 years ago, were told to take an oath with their hand on a Bible because the Bible is a sacred object, and that signifies taking an oath by everything that is sacred. The only sacred object back then was the sign of circumcision. So put your hand on a Bible and swear.
Got it. Great.
V'yashbi'acha b'Adonai Elohei hashamayim ve'Elohei ha'aretz, and I will put you under oath by Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, God of heavens and God of earth. Asher lo tiqash isha livni mibbenot ha'kna'ani asher anochi yoshev b'qirbo, that you must not take a wife for my son from among the daughters of the Canaanites in whose midst I am dwelling. Ki el arsi ve'el moladati telech, but rather to my homeland and the place of my nativity shall you go. V'laqachta isha livni liyitzchak, and you shall take a wife for my son, for Isaac. ויאמר אליו העבד, אולי לא תובע האישה ללכת אחריי אל הארץ הזאת? The servant said to him, perhaps the woman will not desire to follow me to this land. השב אשיב את בנך אל הארץ אשר יצאת משם? Shall I return, bring back your son to the land that you came from? ויאמר אליו אברהם, Abraham said to him, Hishamer lecha pen tashiv et b'ni shamma. Beware of yourself, lest you bring back my son there. Adonai Elohei Hashamayim, asher qahani mi beit avi umeres moladati. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, God of heavens, who brought me from the house of my father and from the land of my nativity. Asher diber li, asher nishba' li lemor l'zar'acha eten et ha'aretz hazot, and who spoke to me and swore to me, saying, to your offspring I will give this land. Hu yishlach mal'acho lefanecha v'lachachta isha livni misham. He will send his messenger before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. V'im lo toveh hasha lalechet acharecha v'niqeta mishuvua zot. If the woman does not desire to follow after you, you shall be cleaned and absolved from this oath. Rak et beni lo tashev shamma. Only, my son, you must not return there. Vayasem ha'eved et yado tachat yerech Avraham adonav. The servant placed his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master. Vayishava lo al hadavar hazeh, and swore to him concerning this matter. Vayikach ha'eved asara gemalim migemalei adonav vayelech v'chol tuv adonav biado. The servant took 10 camels from among the camels of his master, and he went, and all of the goodness of his master was in his hand. Vayakom, vayelech el Aram Naharaim el Ir Nahor. And he arose, and he went to Aram of the two rivers, to the city of Nahor. Vayavrech ha'gamalim mechutz la'ir el be'er ha'mayim l'eit erev, l'eit tzeit ha'sho'avot. And he caused the camels to kneel down outside of the city or town where the water well was at the hour of evening, the hour that the women who draw water come out.
What a beautiful depiction of a moment and a scene, right? Evening when the water drawers come out, the 10 camels, just settling on the floor. And I'm wondering, camels will really feature in this story, right? Really big time. And why do you think? What's going on with camels here? Let's just consider some of the symbols that are coming up: a well, camels, water drawers. What's going on?
I associate them with survival
Survival. So why do you associate them with survival?
because they're capable of going for very long periods without sustenance.
Without sustenance and without water. Now, if you think about Abraham's the forefather that traversed the barren landscape because of God's command, right? And his wife is barren. And now we want to kind of restore the next generation. We need water. So camels are a great symbol of going long distances without water. And here we are at the well, right? Here we are at the place of water with the water drawers. Amazing, right? So the text is really speaking to us about continuity and the promise of water when there isn't any water, when there's a kind of barren landscape and we don't know what happened to Yitzchak. Okay, so let's stay with this moment and see what happened. There's something else about camels, and we're going to pick it up from Psalms, which I'll read. Psalm 13. Pen yomar oivi yichaltiv. Yichaltiv. Sarai yagil ki emot. Lest my enemies say, I have overcome him. My foes exult when I totter. Ba'ani b'chastecha b'tafis yagel libi b'yeshuatecha. But I trust in your faithfulness. My heart will exult in your deliverance. Ashir ladonai ki gamal alai. I'm going to sing to God because God up here. God has been good to me. So if you've heard the term gimilut chasadim, right? Loving kindness, right? Rebecca is the sort of paradigmatic image of that gimilut chasadim. So camel means camel, gamal, but it also means in Hebrew, kindness. So that's kind of amazing, right? And Rebecca brings really the two together, the camels and the camel. What? Gamal?
It means it's also like hills.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Interesting. Wait, I just saw some things in the chat. See what's going on here. Wow, 52 new. Okay, I'm not gonna keep up with, I don't know how to do this. So if anyone wants to share anything in the chat, just let me know if you feel like we're missing something important. Okay, yeah.
Previously, we were talking about fires and.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We've moved from fire to water. It's become a gentler narrative, absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay, so now. Rebecca comes on the scene. There we are, numbers, no? Wait a second. Oh, no, that's right.
Genesis 24.
Yeah, we're in the right place. Okay, so here's what the servant says. The servant is standing by the water, the spring. See, he articulates it in a moment, and he has a prayer. And he said, Vayomer Adonai Elohei Adoni Abraham Hakrena Lefanai Hayom. He said, Adonai, God, my master, Abraham's house, grant me good fortune this day, or literally like make it happen for me, right? Hakrena, please make it happen before me today. Va'aseh chesed im Adoni Abraham, and grant and deal graciously or with kindness with my master Abraham. Hine anochi nitzav al ein hamayim. Here I stand by the spring. Right? It's interesting that he articulates this, proximity with water. Uvinot anshe ha'ir yotzot l'sh'ov mayim, and the daughters of the town are coming out to draw water. V'haya hana'ara asher Omar eleha hatina chadech ve'eshteh ve'amra shteh ve'gam gmalech ashkeh. And let the maiden to whom I say, please lower your jar that I may drink. And who replies, drink and I will also water your camels. So that's sort of like abundance of generosity, right? And also sort of greeting the newcomer and the strangers in town. Like that's the woman that I want, right? You're on J-date or whatever, and your articulation is generosity, right? You don't only say like, okay, call me. It was like, okay, let's get, call me and let's go get together and go to the movies, right? Sort of like beyond my request. That was a very bad analogy. It was good. I don't know. I've never been on dating. I don't know. Okay. Okay, so where were we? Okay. Ota hochachta le'avdecha Yitzchak va'eda ki asita chesed im Adoni. Let her be the one whom you have decreed for your servant Isaac. Thereby shall I know that you have dealt graciously with my master. So this repeat of the word chesed, 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 which is grace, or again, related to kindness, loving kindness. Okay, so there he is by the water, and there are, a few themes: the water and that overabundance of generosity, right, beyond the request, and this idea of chesed. And that's how he'll know it's her. It's like, how do you know it's the right person? How do you know? What are you looking for? That's what he's looking for. What?
Who's overly kind?
He's asking that the woman that said that when he says, give me to drink, she says, here's some water, and I will also give your camels to drink. That's gonna be, she's the one. Because she's overly kind, overly generous. What? Considerate. He's like, and attuned to animals, which is really beautiful. Thinks about others. Exactly. Thinks about others. Beautiful.
It's a willingness to sacrifice something precious.
Ah, a willingness to sacrifice something precious. What did you say, Rob?
Said there were 10 camels.
There were 10 camels. It's a lot to draw. We're going to see that. Actually, I don't think we're going to see it. What?
It's a minute.
It's a minion. It's a minion of camels. I love that. A minion of camels. And they're blessing, because it says vayavrech hagmalim. They're kneeling, which is also a word for blessing. So it's definitely a minion. Okay, Asher Chaim.
Public service announcement that on Wednesday night in the weekly As the Torah Turns, Rabbi Ingber taught a lot about Gamal the camel and Gomel performing kindness, and did a deep dive into that.
Cool.
Here,
you want to share anything that's relevant now?
too much.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay.
I appreciated your mentioning her attunement to animals, which echoes Noah, whose care of the
Ooh.
animals.
Nice. And we're going to have another echo of Noah. Beautiful.
He saved the world because he was willing to care for the animals. And she will keep the promise of Abraham alive because she is attuned to the thirst of the camels.
Beautiful. So now that you're unmuted, go on to the next passage.
Vayhihu terem killa ledaber, and it happened even before he could finish talking. V'hinei Rivka Yosef asher yulda livtuel ben Milka eshet Nahor achei Abraham. And behold, Rebecca was coming out. She was the one who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, the brother of Abraham. V'chadah al shichmah, and her pitcher was on her shoulder.
So beautiful. And so we're looking for literally the vehicle for the water, the vehicle for blessing in continuing this story. So the water drawer is the perfect, right, embodiment of that.
V'hannaara tovat mar'eh me'od.
It doesn't hurt that she's beautiful too, right?
Yeah. Betula v'ish lo yida'ah. Young woman, never intimate with a man. V'tered ha'ayna v'tamaleh chadah v'ta'al. She went down towards the spring, filled up her pitcher, and came up. Vayaros ha'eved liqratah. Vayomer hagmi'ini na me'at mayim mikadech. The servant ran towards her and said, give me a little water from your pitcher, please.
So now start to notice time here. So the servant runs, and there's like a speeding up of the action. And it also reminds me of Abraham and Sarah and their response to the three strangers, right, that come to their tent, and the speed with which Abraham runs to them and says to Sarah, hurry up, prepare this and that, right? So there's a speed in this text, and it'll be contrasted in a few minutes with the opposite.
Vatomer shte Adoni, and she said, drink, my lord. Vatmaher vatored kadah al yadah vatashkehu. She speedily brought the pitcher down off her shoulder and gave him water. Vatachal lahashkoto. And as soon as she finished giving him water, Vatomer gam legmalecha eshav ad im kilu lishtot. She said, I will also draw water for your camels until they've finished drinking.
That's 10 camels. And also note that he asks, like, can you give me just a drop of water? And she replies again with this this sense of overabundance. Imagine if we went through our days, how can I respond to this person with overabundance? How can I respond to this person with abundance? They ask me for a little, can I give them a lot? Or maybe I can't at all, right? But it's an interesting aspiration. Okay, go on.
Yeah, it's not just giving each camel a couple of gallons to get to the next gas station, but it's filling them up to the top. And yeah, I've been told it's 25 gallons per camel. A gallon weighs about 8 pounds. Multiply 8 times 25 by 10, and you get 2,000 pounds, a ton of water.
So she's not only fast, she's strong. She's powerful. Go on.
ותמהר ותער קדח אל השוקת ותרוס עוד אל הבאר לשאוב ותשאב לכל גמליו. She speedily poured out her pitcher into the trough and ran back to the well to draw more and drew water for all of his camels. והאיש משתאה לך. The man was blown away by her. Maharish ladat ahifliach Adonai darko imlo. He was silently wondering, did Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh make his path successful or not?
So the question is, why doesn't he know? He said the prayer. He said the young woman who gives not only me to drink but my cow, she's the one, and that's what happened. So why doesn't he know? So let's see when he knows. What?
She hasn't given consent.
Okay, go on.
Vayhi kasher killu hagamalim lishtot, vayikach ha'ish nezem zahav beka mishkalo. And it happened that when the camels had finished drinking, the man took out a nose ring that was the weight of a half shekel, which of gold is a lot of bling. Ushnei tzmidim al yadeha asara zahav mishkalam, and 2 bracelets on her arms, each one 10 shekel weight of gold. Vayomer bat miat hagidi na li, and he asked, whose little girl are you? Please tell me. Hayesh beit avich makom lanu lalin. Might there be at your father's house a place for us to camp out? Vatomer elav bat betuel anochi ben milka asher yalda lenahor. And she said to him, I'm the daughter of Betuel, who is son of Milcah, born to Nahor.
So this is Abraham's family, right? Nahor was Abraham's brother.
Vatomer elav, and she said to him, Gam teven gam mispo rav imanu. We also have lots of fodder, gam makom lalun, and also a place to camp out. Vayitod ha'ish vayishtahu ladonai. The man bowed down and bowed to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh.
In other words, now he knows she's the one because she's from Abraham's family. That's the sign, right? So now it's all a matter of bargaining with her family, which he does. And he tells the story and retells the story, and it's like a very long chapter, and the dramatic tension is unbelievable. And again, the promise is hanging from a thread, right? Is this gonna work? Is this not gonna work? Like, we don't know. And then basically they come to an agreement. And he wants to go. He wants to take her away back to Yitzchak. And that's where we are in the story now. And let's see what happens. Here, I'll read this. Next one, Caroline. Next text. That's right. Okay, yeah, go to perfect. Vayochlu v'yashtuhu v'anashim asher imo. So the servant and the people that he was with, they drank and ate. Vayalinu, and they slept. Vayakumu baboker, and they woke up in the morning. Vayomer, and he said, Shalchuni ladoni, send me to my master, right? Like, let me go, send me to my master. Vayomer achiha ve'ima, and her brother and mother said, Teshev hanara itanu yamim o asor or asor achar telech. And her brother and mother say, let the young woman, teenager, not clear, stay with us some days or maybe 10. And after that, we can go. I'm sorry, after that, go. So, or I'm sorry, after that, she can go. So let's think about, Rebecca's like speedy and wants to make things happen, and the servant's speedy and wants to make things happen. And suddenly time's moving in the other directions. Delay, delay, delay. Vayoma alehem. And then the servant says very directly, Al te'acharu oti. Don't delay me. Adonai hitzliach darki. And God, has made my journey successful. Shalchuni, again, shalchuni, let me go. Ve'elcha ladoni, and I will go to my master. Vayomru, and they said, Nikra lena'ara, v'nish'ala et piha. Let's call the young woman, and we're going to ask her directly from her mouth. Vayikra'u Rivka, and they called Rivka. Vayomru eleha, they said to her, Hatulchi im ha'ish hazeh, will you go with this man? Vatomer elech, and she goes, I will go. So there's a few extraordinary things here. One is she gives very explicit consent, and they seem to feel like they should ask her, which is amazing. Also, that doubling of the verb that's used for Abraham at the start of his journey, lech lecha, is used here. Will you go? I will go. Amazing. So many scholars call her the Abraham of her generation, but she goes from his hometown, leaves her family and her birthplace and everything, and goes to a strange land. But she doesn't go in the context of a command. She goes in the sense of, oh, this is my destiny. Or I'm excited by this guy and what he's saying. I don't know. Or I can't stand my family. I don't know what it is. Right? No, I want to get out of here. Another possibility. But whatever it is, she leaves and she goes on the same journey that Abraham went on. And we'll see in a minute that she also receives the blessing for that generation. Vayishalchu et Rivka achotam. And they sent Rivka, their sister, the et menita, and her nursemaid, which is really interesting. I guess that indicates how young she is. The et Eved Abraham, and the servant of Abraham, the et Anashav, and his entourage. Vayivarchu et Rivka, and they blessed Rivka by Amru la, and they said to her, Achotenu at hayi la'alfei revava. Our sister, you shall be like thousands of myriads. Is that a good translation? Let's see. It says, yeah, grow into thousands of myriads. That's a lot. But you shall like sort of multiply. Vayirash zarech et sha'ar son av, and your seed shall inherit the gates of their enemies. So this is the same blessing that was given to Abraham at some point. But Takam Rivka v'naroteha, and Rivka and her entourage rose up, but Tirkavna al malim, and they're riding on the camels. There are those camels again. V'teilechna acharei ha'ish, and they go after the man. V'kacha eved et Rivka v'yelech, and the servant took Rivka and went. So finally, they were successful in their journey, right? And the delay tactics did not. And what's emerging is this woman of incredible agency and power and strength willing to make this journey. Okay, so now we're going to see what happened to Isaac and Isaac's reemergence in the text. Finally, right? It took many verses, 62 verses for Isaac actually to reemerge in this chapter on the scene.
Can I ask you a Rebecca question? before?
Yes,
This paradox.
paradox.
Is it a paradox?
Is it a
Where-
paradox? Go ahead.
Where, at least as I remember Rebecca, and as I first met her amongst the archetypes, like, she was known not for her superabundance of kindness and radical hospitality, but for being clever. Like, she secures the blessing for Isaac, the blessing for Jacob from Isaac. She's a little tricky, she's a little crafty.
So they
She's-
think she,
like, is
we're
that-
gonna, well, I see it as actually a transformation.
But how
We're
do
gonna
these
see-
branches
We're
relate?
gonna see the genesis of that transformation in a moment.
Okay,
My sense of her is she does what the context requires.
she does what the context requires.
That's my sense of her.
Which speaks to what you just said about agency and initiative and willingness.
Sometimes, maybe, in order to go forward, a little craftiness and strategy is needed. And other times, an overabundance of generosity. You know, the other question is, could she have displayed her strength straight on? We're gonna ask that, we're gonna see that question in a minute. Or maybe she couldn't, and she needs to work behind the scenes as other foremothers have.
I
Okay,
just think it's lovely cleverness and kindness in one person. That's actually kind of rare that those two virtues are associated.
you don't think so, Tamar?
She's smart.
Yeah, wait. Here you
Well,
go.
she's very intelligent. And so even the fact that she had the thought of not just like, oh, you asked me for water, here's water. She goes, here's water. And also, I notice you have camels. They need to drink. That takes intelligence. That
She
takes-
notices the
like,
context.
Yeah, that's what I said. She's considerate, but she also like sees the whole picture.
Beautiful,
And-
beautiful.
And is thinking, critical thinking. And I think that shows her intelligence. And then the fact as well that she's like, it all seems to connect that she's like, wow, I want to leave. And I always thought it was really sad when like young women had to leave their homes. And it was kind of like, oh, and then you never see your family again. But then it's like, they've never seen anything else either. And it takes bravery and curiosity to want to travel. She wants to go somewhere else. So
Absolutely.
she's probably like 14 and she's like, yeah, I've never seen anything else. I want to go. Like, bye,
Right.
mom. Also, why is her dad not in it?
He appears very briefly. That's a very good question.
Because it's her mom and brother.
And
who say
yeah,
she's-
that's a very good question. I don't know the answer. But you're right.
But other people-
He's not there. Someone might know the answer.
Why does a 14-year-old need a nurse?
Oh, is she like a nurse? Me too.
She is a nurse. So good question. I mean, maybe it's like something of home is traveling with her. And
It's like
it's,
the nurse in Romeo and Juliet.
Juliet, I was
It's the-
thinking of the nurse in Juliet.
oh, there's a nurse in Romeo and Juliet.
Really important. She's
Yeah.
way closer with her than her mother.
I think it's like bringing in a transitional object with you,
All right.
right? Something like that. Okay, Asher Haim wants to say something. You gotta unmute if you're gonna, yeah.
Yes, answering Tomas, Ecclesiastes says, Al te chasid yoter, don't be excessively pious, as in don't be so sweet all the time that you're a namby-pamby, you get pushed over and history rolls over you like a bulldozer. Sometimes you have to stand up and use unsavory methods to accomplish good in the world.
It's a
Dibarti.
tricky question. When do you need this and when do you need that? Right, but okay, Rachel, and then we're gonna go on. Yeah.
I'm just wondering why a woman of such.
Sorry, Mike, please.
Mike?
Okay, yeah, okay.
Or I can repeat what you're saying. either way.
Okay, I'm just wondering why a woman of such wealth is standing at a watering place where she has so many servants who can bring her water. I think she's out there looking for action.
It's the whole picture. I'm just gonna say to that, amen. Okay, let's go on. Caroline, please screen share. A woman looking for action and she gets it. I love it. Love it. Okay. Woman of virtue looking for action. Okay. Okay, so here's Isaac on the scene and where's he coming from? So we're gonna, in our remaining time, we're gonna dig into that. Where is he coming from? Yitzchak had just come from the vicinity of the spring water, right? Of the living one who sees me, which is really interesting because when we last saw that place, Hagar was there. Hagar was there. So we're gonna dig into that in a minute. Hagar was at that place. V'hu yoshed be'eretz haNegev, and he was settled in the region of the Negev. So that's where he's been all this time, right? We finally know. Veitzei Yitzchak lasuach basadeh. And Isaac went out walking in the field, or lasuach is also can mean conversing. So the rabbis understood this as Isaac was praying, and he's actually he's the one for whom mincha is sort of created. He's like he's davening mincha here. Vayisa einav, and he lifts up his eyes. Vayar, and he beholds, or he sees. V'hinei kmalim ba'im, and he sees camels coming. So that's interesting. He sees the camels, right? And perhaps they're a symbol of hope for him. I don't know. Vatisa Rivka et eineha, and Rivka lifts her eyes. So they both lift their eyes. He sees camels. What does she see? V'terei et Yitzchak, and she sees a human. She sees Isaac, right? Which already might point to her ability to see and his inability to see. But tipol me'al hagamal, and she falls off the camel. She literally falls off. I mean, you could say she alighted, but literally she falls off she fell. She falls off the camel. So what does she see in Isaac that sort of possibly freaks her out? So Aviva Zornberg, the great sort of literary interpreter of the Torah, says that she saw a kind of like limitation of vision. I'm sort of restating, and understood that she could not meet him in the full force of her difference, which answers your question. Why is she now? And then what does she do? She veils herself, right? Which is also symbolic. The Tomer el ha'eved mi ha'ish halazeh ha'holech basideh. So she says to the servant, "Who's this guy who's walking around in the field to greet us? L'klatenos bayomer ha'eved hu Adoni." That's my master. And what does she do? Batikat hatseif batitkas. And she takes the veil and she veils herself. Now you might think, okay, this is what a woman would do planning to get married, but that was not, I looked this up, that was not a Near Eastern wedding custom. So she's veiling herself, I think, as a symbol, the Torah is telling us, of her needing to veil herself in her life to come with Isaac. Like he can't take possibly the truth head on. Yeah, Marley, here, come.
In a way,
You have to speak to the speaker, otherwise people can't hear.
This really started Isaac as trauma narrative, right? He's been through this experience, whether you want to call it resurrection, soul murder that he had to recover.
Soul
from.
murder.
That's a term a psychoanalyst named Schengold used for child sexual soul murder.
Who was my therapist? Who knows that?
Oh, very impressive.
Side note, just a note.
These things are like dynasties, these psychoanalysts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so it's hard to hear you, so I'm gonna say, so Marla was talking about Isaac's trauma, and some would call it soul murder.
Yes. So he comes to, he goes to Baden-Baden, Eden, Pain Whitney, whatever you want to call it, for 3 years.
So he goes somewhere for 3 years to heal. Garden of Eden, yeah.
And then I feel like with Rebecca, it had to take someone exceptional to be able to not only be with him, but the act of veiling, it's like being where the patient is.
Yeah.
Saw what he was able to do or not able to do, and she met him at that point. So it's not just like a wife, it's almost, and a true partner, you could almost use it as a paradigm for an attuned therapist.
So Marla's saying that Rebecca was almost like a therapist, able to attune herself to what his capacity was, his limited capacity, which doesn't make for much of a marriage.
Well,
Makes for a good therapist-patient relationship. There's all kinds of marriages. Okay, Wendy.
And Rebecca veiling herself is propagated to today in the wedding ceremony of the Bedekin.
Yes, right.
So it's significant and
So
it's
the
carried
ritual
forward
at
to
the wedding
today.
of veiling. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, yeah, Eric.
I just want to speak out possibly against the narrative about how damaged Isaac is, because we were all kind of running with that, and David ran with it last night. You know, my father didn't talk to God periodically, and so he grew up with Abraham, and we might be looking at someone who's on a very different plane of existence. He was 37 years old at the time of the Akeda, from what I
Well,
understand.
That's one understanding.
Well-
It's not the shot.
Well, was he a baby? Was he a child? I mean, that's, I mean, all right, so, yeah, so
Understanding.
so
Midrashic
there was
understanding.
nothing in the Torah that when he was being bound, he said, Dad, what the hell are you doing? As if he kind of understood that this is what God wants and he was. So in other words, I don't think we can take our experience and project it onto these people, you know, just say, well, I would have been traumatized, therefore he must have been
Yeah.
traumatized.
Yeah, I want to expand on that. Can I have the speaker?
No.
Oh, I have it. I'm sorry.
This is
So,
ours.
so Isaac, remember, I'm with you. I think, well, I think there is trauma, and I think Isaac is a unique male ancestor, different than his father and his son. He's the only one never to have left the land of Canaan. He's the only one to be in a monogamous marriage. And he's the first one for whom it is said he loved his wife. Right? He loved his wife. So that's extraordinary. And he prays on behalf of his wife. There's lots of things that you could say about Isaac. And the text tells us directly when he's redigging the wells of his father that he's a great man. So I almost agree with you in the sense that I think he's a very complicated person. And I think he does represent great strength. Okay, so let's go on. So we're not going to read the whole thing because we don't have too much time about Hagar, remembering what Hagar's experience at the well. I just want to point out one thing, which is she names God, right? She says, hold on, is that? Yeah. V'tikra Shem Adonai in verse 13 of Genesis 16. But Tikra she Hagar, so she's cast out into the desert. Her mistress Sarah is afflicting her, is abusing her, and then she goes out and she's seen by God, and she says in verse 13, "V'tikra Shem Adonai hadover eleha ata el ro'i." So she calls the name of Yud-He Vav-He, who is speaking to her, and she says, "You are a seeing God." And then she said, Ki Amra, because she said, Hadam halom ra'iti achare ro'i. And can I go on seeing, or I've gone on seeing after I've been seen. So it's the place of being seen, which I actually think brings us back to David's interesting point about it was Abraham's story, but was Isaac seen? So maybe he went to the place where he was seen in his excruciating and impossible experience. Connor.
No, I don't know.
Okay, so let's see what Shai Held, Dr. Rabbi Shai Held says about this. What? Rabbi Dr. Shai Held. Cast out alone in the desert, Hagar discovers, or better, it's discovered by a God who regards the unregarded, remembers those whom others have forgotten. By telling us that Isaac has gone to Be'er L'chai Ro'i, the text subtly tells us something extremely important. Where does Isaac go in the aftermath of the Akedah? To the place where Hagar met God.
That's, wow.
And then he continues and says, perhaps Isaac, newly traumatized, goes to find comfort in his father's other wife, undoubtedly bearing some deep traumas of her own. Perhaps newly traumatized, Isaac also has some newfound compassion for Hagar's predicament and seeks not only to be consoled, but also to offer consolation. Having been made to suffer at Abraham's hands, he has a newfound capacity to embrace those who have endured a similar fate. This actually goes back to what Tamar was saying about seeing others and their needs. Isaac has just come from a terrifying encounter with God's mysterious, uncompromisingly demanding side. Elohim. Much of what has guided him has been called into dramatic and excruciating question. Who is Abraham, a father who declares his presence to Isaac and yet agrees to sacrifice him? And yet, and who is the God who demands such a behavior of Abraham? Okay, I'm not gonna read the last one because I think it kind of, well, actually, I will. So. Isaac, confused, troubled, likely somewhat lost, heads for the one place he knows where a very different face of God has been revealed, the Er Lachai Ro'i, to rediscover a face of God which has been eclipsed for him, the God of mercy and compassion, rather than stern judgment or sheer inscrutability. Okay, so that makes sense of why Isaac would go to Be'er Lachai Ro'i. And then the last text here is the connection between Isaac and Rebecca. Vayisaper ha'eved litzchak et kol dvarim asher asa. So the servant told Isaac the whole story, what happened and what everything he did. Vayivieha Yitzchak ha'ohala Sarah imo. And so Isaac brings Rebecca into the tent of Sarah, his mother. V'yikach et Rivka, and he took Rivka, or he slept with her, but tehilo lisha, and she became for him a wife. Va'ye'eha veha, and he loved her. And then the final words, which I find so beautiful, Vayinicham Yitzchak acharei imo, and Isaac was comforted after the death of his mother. So we end with comfort, we end with love, we